You must be exhausted, aren't you? You've always been sensitive, maybe a little too sensitive. You knew from a very early age that you felt a lot more than most people. You felt everything. Every life experience felt like an epic adventure, full of victorious highs and dangerous lows. How could they not see what you saw? How could they not understand the swinging pendulum of emotion that rose and fell within you each moment? There was a purity in the way you experienced the world, an amplified openness and curiosity that made you hyper-aware of the joy and complexity and heartbreak of life. What gave others happiness gave you pure ecstasy. What gave them disappointment gave you heart-shattering pain. You have felt yourself moved from tears of pure joy to tears of desperate sadness, all in the course of an afternoon. Sometimes you knew why you were feeling those things so intensely. Sometimes you didn't. The quote you've just heard comes from author Ora North. It is the opening paragraph from the introduction to her book, I Don't Want to Be an Empath Anymore. Did her words resonate with you? They certainly resonated with me. I've always seemed to be able to pick up on emotions easily, though I myself am actually quite reserved. When people around me exude joy, a part of me glows with them. When I see someone in pain, I feel their sorrow and terror as well. It's one of the reasons that certain media troubles me so nowadays. Horror movies or films filled with blood and gore can make me feel physically ill at times. It's so difficult to watch them because I can imagine that pain and terror and therefore feel it myself. Does that sound like you? Do you feel deeply and all the time? Do you call yourself an empath or have those around you mentioned it? Either way, I'm sure it hasn't been easy. Ora North knows that it hasn't been, as do I. One claims the title empath and almost immediately someone seems to come crawling out of the woodwork to cry, "No, you're not. Empath, that's all mumbo-jumbo. It's just made up. No, you're not. You're just a crybaby. You're too sensitive. Grow up. Face reality." For me personally once, I mentioned in close confidence to a friend that I wondered if I was an empath, just based on what I had been feeling at the time and just the sheer intensity of emotions and thoughts that I felt. And his response was laughter, a scoff, and rolling eyes. In this video, we will travel together through Ora North's take on empaths and empathy, including her insider view into what is often called the spiritual community, and examine her proposed methods of empowerment and self-examination. This is more than a quick review or a brief pat on the back of the exhausted empath. This is a discussion of some of the major points of the book, an examination of some of Ora North's proposed techniques. An in-depth review, if you will. My sincere hope is that through this examination, we will all grow in knowledge and understanding. Before we dive into the ocean of empathy, I would like to take a moment to introduce Ora North, the author of this book. I can think of no better way than to give you some insight into her background using her own words. On her website, oranorth.com, is stated the following. Ora North is a published author with New Harbinger Publications and Reveal Press, spiritual teacher and shamanic practitioner, and mental health advocate. While very involved in the spiritual community, North does not subscribe to the love and light or good vibes only mentality that can often whitewash or bypass the very real struggles of the marginalized. Because of this, her focus is on shadow work and promoting the acceptance and validation of all our feelings, not just the positive ones, as tools for growth. She has experience and training in multiple healing traditions and mystery schools, and is always integrating those skills with real-world practicality and research. She is the author of I Don't Want to Be an Empath Anymore and Mood Magic. She always has her hands in personal creative projects, whether it's fiction writing, poetry, interior design projects, music, photography, or divination studies. And the profile goes on to mention that her sun sign is Leo Sun, Scorpio Moon, and then Scorpio Rising. Her human design is Manifester. She also includes her enneagram as the number 4, and she is currently located in St. Paul, Minnesota. So as we can see by her own words, Ora North seems to care deeply about helping others, and I think this is also made quite evident in her book, I Don't Want to Be an Empath Anymore, where she states, "More than anything, I want you to be able to live your life as an empowered empath, doing what you came to this planet to do." Page 8. And now, having said all of this, that begs the question, what exactly is an empath? Well, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, an empath is simply one who experiences the emotions of others, one who has empathy for another. And what of empathy? Again, from Merriam-Webster, the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and here's this, vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experiences of another. Vicariously experiencing. I think that is certainly one way to describe it. And now let us compare that to Ora North's definitions in her book. From page 11 through 12, an empath is someone who feels the emotions of others, someone whose identity is emotionally interwoven with others. She goes on to discuss empathy, stating that it can be learned, but you simply cannot become an empath. She posits that it is a part of you, a gift or a talent that you are intrinsically born with. So how do you know if you are a, quote, true empath and not just empathetic? Well, Ora North has suggested some signs, and these are sort of a paraphrase of what is found in her book, but some of her suggested signs that you might be a born empath are: you are sensitive toward other people. You can feel someone's emotions without being told. Your body mimics the pains of someone else. You are extremely sensitive to depictions or discussions of violence, gore, and cruelty. You are a healer or seek to heal others. You seem to know things about someone before they tell you. You experience strong emotional reactions to media such as music or movies. Children or animals seem naturally drawn to you. People will share their secrets and deep personal thoughts with you, even if you are a stranger to them. Nature calls to you. You can actually physically feel the energy of people and places. You suddenly experience the emotions of others, bringing you to tears or feeling immense anger when you know you personally are feeling neither. You have accurate dreams about those you know. You are sensitive to the environment, including food such as food and chemical sensitivities or allergies. Crowds can easily overwhelm you. And now for myself, going through this list, I definitely seem to fit most of this description, particularly being able to physically feel the energy of people and places. Crowds overwhelm me quite easily. I find cities, if I'm not emotionally prepared or mentally prepared, drain me greatly, and I feel almost numb after my time there because it feels like I can feel everyone there. It's very hard to explain. As I mentioned before, extremely sensitive to depictions or discussions of violence, gore, and cruelty. It is very difficult because immediately my imagination, my empathy, sort of makes me empathize with those who are being hurt, and I can feel that. I can imagine how that would feel. It doesn't feel good. Animals seem naturally drawn to me. I've often had friends comment, that a pet, doesn't usually warm up so quickly, or, I'll be out in nature and sitting there quietly, and all of a sudden, birds will land next to me, or, other such things. So reading through this, it definitely felt like, oh, this seems to validate myself And instead of an eye roll when I explain these things to my friend, Ora North states quite clearly, oh, this might be some signs that you're an empath. And with that being said, now that we have that sort of glimpse into what an empath is and an understanding of our author's motivations and her definitions, I think it is safe to say that this book, I Don't Want to Be an Empath Anymore, is a book written by an empath for empaths. A validating thing in and of itself to know that one of us cares deeply enough to reach out to us directly through the power of published word. And that care is present throughout the book, and not in ways that you might think. True to her own words, Ora North does not present a book filled with glitter and unicorns. You will not find love and light written in sparkly gel pen in the margins. You won't find the pages telling you that there is nothing wrong with you, that you just have to manifest happy thoughts and all your pain will go away, or encourage you to buy a class or attend a seminar. What you will find here is that holding people accountable is caring. Holding yourself accountable is caring. Telling people to acknowledge the fact that they aren't perfect is caring. Standing firm in reality and telling people to do the work, that healing will take time and work, that it will be hard but you can do it, that is caring. And that is something that we are about to examine a little more in depth. Are you afraid of something? Whatever it is, let me help. Kirk hums. Let me help. 100 years or so from now, I believe, a famous novelist will write a classic using that theme. He'll recommend those 3 words even over, I love you. Now, were you expecting to hear a quote from the original Star Trek series when you clicked on this video? Probably not, but I'll tell you why it was included. That quote comes from an episode titled The City on the Edge of Forever, arguably one of the finer, or finest, episodes to come out of the original series. And in that particular scene, in that particular episode, Captain Kirk states plainly out loud the words that are written on every empath's heart, at least in my own belief. Let me help. Indeed, as Kirk says, those 3 words can reign even over I love you in many ways. Though I personally believe for an empath, those 3 words are equal to each other. I love you means let me help. Let me help means I love you. Ora North has her own take on this, though I think she in a way acknowledges and addresses this. I think we can both agree that such is the natural calling of the empath, to help. Does that sound familiar? How many times do you find yourself helping others? Putting their needs above your own? Feeling their joy, their sorrow? But knowing deep down that something is wrong even as they smile at you? Feeling deeply the pain that reflects in their eyes and wishing desperately that there was something you could do, some way that you could help even more. To quote Ora North from page 10, when another being is suffering, it's like their energy is calling out to the void from the freezing waters, reaching for a hand that could pull them to safety. Empaths feel that call more than anything else. As natural as this calling is, I think it is safe to say that the empath must be careful. Pain is all at once a call to arms and the song of a siren to us. In our true and well-meaning desire to help others, I think we can forget that we cannot pour from an empty vessel. So natural and so loud is this calling to help that I think we can and will drive ourselves to the very limits of physical and mental health if it means that someone's pain may be lessened, that someone could possibly be helped. Again, a noble cause. But what of the empath's pain? What if the empath needs help? Now, I will say that there is absolutely nothing more wonderful than having the privilege and the ability to help others. No matter how small, you see examples all throughout history. Help can come in the form of grand monetary donations, feasts, protection, and sometimes that help just comes in the form of a hand on the shoulder and saying, "It's all right." Personally, I think helping others, well, really there's nothing more soulfully nourishing, at least for me. But I myself, and I think every empath, needs to be reminded that we are only human, and that in a fallen world such as this there is hardship, suffering, and malice. Things that others face, but that we face ourselves. Ora North states this plainly, I believe, in page 11. Herein lies the paradox of empathy. Being connected to the emotions of others leaves an empath incredibly isolated. Your own emotions are often left buried and unseen, especially since for someone to truly see you and your pain, they would also have to see you seeing the pain of everyone else. A startling thought. I know I myself have experienced this difficulty with my previous partner, trying to explain to them the depth, the intensity of the emotions that I felt for my fellow man. It was just something that they couldn't understand. I think many empaths have faced that at one point or another, unfortunately. Such is the curse of the empath. I think it is actually quite easy to think of the empath as being someone who sacrifices at every turn. Sacrifices everything, in fact. And on top of it, someone who is prone to fits of emotion such as sobbing, screaming, or raging at the drop of a pin. Someone who is characterized by their role of serving others, of healing others, of standing up for others. While these descriptions may encompass some, they do not depict all. I know many empaths who are extremely reserved and focused in their abilities. I myself am a self-described empath, but I am extremely reserved with my emotions. Stone-faced, actually, believe it or not, as some might say. But I feel deeply. In fact, maybe that reservedness is actually a way of protecting myself. However, be that as it may, I know many empaths who are able to acknowledge that part of themselves that feels deeply, but at the same time have found ways to maintain boundaries with others, and they take the time that they need to refresh their own energy reserves before jumping back into the emotional fray. Now, Ora North calls such empaths empowered empaths, and I agree. I think they are truly empowered. They help, but do not martyr themselves into pits of resentment. They hold boundaries with others so that they are not taken advantage of, allowing them to give freely to those who truly need it. They understand the difference between holding someone accountable and giving them a free pass. Empowered by healthy habits, they are a magnetic and powerful force for good in this world. Now that I truly believe. But I also believe and agree with Ora North in her examination that a lot of empaths nowadays are exhausted, drained, resentful. And so begs the question, wonderful that we have so many empowered empaths, but what about the disempowered empath? Well, I do believe that without healthy habits, good tools, and good support, an empath can find themselves chained to their role, twisting their desire to help others into this sort of double-edged sword that poisons them with resentment and cuts those around them instead of healing them. Again, I agree with Ora North's assessment of the current day and age, inasmuch as that it is very easy for an empath to be overwhelmed. As she goes on to describe, whether it be at work, at home, or relationship, there seems to always be something that needs to be done, someone that needs to be helped. And just as you think you have a handle on everything, you open up your phone, turn on the TV, or open up the newspaper, and suddenly right there in the palm of your hand the ugly belly of the world is shown. Injustice, destruction, disaster, blood, pain, sadness, death. It can all be so much, on top of everything else, work, a relationship. Honestly, there have been many times myself, but on top of being overloaded with life, that I'll sometimes go days without checking my phone, or looking at the news, or getting onto social media, simply because I'm just so overloaded with the suffering and sort of incessant chatter. Unfortunately, there is suffering in this world. There is no light without darkness. In this, our fallen world, even the most beautiful things we know, such as the wish to help others, can become twisted. Now, not saying that there isn't any hope. Does that mean there is no hope? No, of course not. Does that mean that an empath only has two paths? You can either be empowered or strong, or broken and weak? Not at all. I believe the empowered empaths were once overwhelmed empaths, and even then they are not strong all the time. No one is. And this, I think, is what I appreciate the most of Ora North's letter, essentially, her book, and charge to empaths. She's very real about everything. She calls life what it is. She acknowledges that the world is hard, that life is hard, that being an empath is hard because we are all human. And I like what she mentions here, that human beings are of divine and of the mundane, flesh and spirit, a binary that requires a measure of balance. But while she does acknowledge this, that life is hard and that it is difficult to be an empath and difficult truly to be human at the end of the day, she also does hold one accountable. She deals a reality check in the book. And so, she says life is hard, but that doesn't mean you roll over and, get lost in this sort of victim mindset. It actually means you need to take a good long look at yourself, at your life. And that if you want to be empowered, if you want to grow, you must do the work. You must take that step forward. And now I will let Ora North's words speak for herself here, through the form of some of my favorite quotes from her book, sort of along the same theme of thought. Here they are. From page 104. Being able to let go of what's dead is difficult, but it's a sign of great wisdom and acceptance. From page 94. It's not your job to build your boundaries. It's your job to be aware of what they already are. From page 68. Just because other people have things worse than you doesn't mean your problem isn't valid. From page 31. It's much harder to reach your destination when you're lying to yourself about your starting point. Page 7. What you need to make this work successful is your willingness to see yourself. And again from page 7. No one is immune to obstacles, but we can choose how to handle them. And finally, from page 5, the only way out of the pain is through it. Now, Ora North supports the empath. I think her words here, these quotes, make that quite evident, that she cares but is also quite willing to remind us of the reality of life. It is difficult to let things go. It is dreadful to look your pain in the face and acknowledge it, and not just stuff it away. You have to remember that you are human, that you suffer too. But you also need to remember that you are the one in charge of your life, and while sometimes you cannot control every single little thing that happens to you, you can control how you react. No one is immune to obstacles. The only way out of the pain is through it. This is one of the reasons I enjoyed the book so much, I think, is that it is a real book. It is a raw book, and I mean raw in the sense that it does not sugarcoat. Ora North simply tells it like it is. If you want to try and find a better way forward, if you want to change, you have to work. Work hard and keep working. She all at once validates the empath's experience while making sure that you are held accountable for what you can control and encouraging that you can do it. And to sort of continue along this vein of thought, I think part of this book's draw, beyond the validation, is this real rawness, something that I think is lacking in today's world. And Ora North does mention that, and we'll sort of go into this a little more in detail here. I think especially nowadays it is so easy to sugarcoat things, to lie, essentially, to make things not seem as bad as they really are, essentially to sell this, always selling this get-rich-quick scheme, and claim that through love and light and positive vibes, all your troubles will be over. It just feels very much like it's not very soothing. It's empty compared to the dark pain that saws away at your heart sometimes, pulling you into cold memories that you wish you could forget. And the only response, it seems to be from every community, but especially the spiritual community as it is right now, is, I feel this pain, it won't go away. Nothing is working, I'm so lost. And the response is, love and light, don't think about it. Push it away. Here, have a crystal. Ora North, again, tells it like it is, and she, again, explains how she feels about sort of how the spiritual community, unquote, sort of treats it. She makes it almost akin to this toxic mantra, and she actually goes on in the book to list 7 distortions in New Age thinking that she feels are actually causing more harm than good, not just to empaths, but people seeking real help in general. Now, follow me now as we sort of go through each of these proposed distortions and sort of examine them a little more in depth, along with my own thoughts on them. And the 7 distortions she purports are: always focus on the present and now. If you're feeling sad, use positive affirmations. We are all one. Emotions aren't important, so ignore them and let them pass. Your reaction to other people is all about you, not them. You create your own reality. Good vibes only. She goes on a bit more to describe in detail just how these things have become distorted, in her opinion, providing an informed examination as a member of the said community, which I think is important. Now, that being said, her discussion is quite balanced, because she does acknowledge how she agrees with the statements on some level, but also examines how their current renditions can be harmful to the overwhelmed empath without that balance. And so now let's go through each of these distortions while I provide some personal dialogue. Now, focusing on the present can be a good thing and keep you from anxious overthinking of the future, and spending too much time mired in the past keeps you from moving forward. However, if there is unresolved pain in your past that has not been properly addressed, it can manifest in ways that you least expect, to your detriment in the present, affecting your future. Positive words and affirmations can help to a point, as you can control your thoughts and how you react to things. But what if your pain is so deep that the comfort phrase feels more like a band-aid, almost like a joke? Words can only do so much. Sometimes you need action and work, not just a honeyed phrase. Now, we are all one. We are all human beings, one race, one spirit on some level. But I think above that deep intrinsic spiritual bond we share, we are all also individuals, quite unique and never seen before combinations of talent, thought, flesh, and spirit. And that means that each one of us has our own struggles. Each has our own mountains to conquer. Simply saying we are all one can roll over the fact that we are also individuals, and that each of us has our own private pain and struggle. Now, here with emotions existing, they exist whether we like it or not, but we should not let them control us and pull us every which way all the time. It is not prudent to completely dismiss them. Now, there are certain situations, but we'll caveat to that. Emotions are real, and if you have the thought and time to do so, take a moment and ask why you are feeling the emotion you are in that moment. Allow yourself to feel, but have the self-control to not act on it in the moment. and to make note of it and examine it later when you gain a deeper power over yourself. Or in that moment, if you do, don't blow up or completely go off the rails, to coin a phrase. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this? And then if you can, if you're in a safe space, discuss that with whoever it is that has caused that emotion within you. Get those words out of there. Sometimes just speaking out loud can help you make sense of things. And being able to acknowledge that the emotion is existing, but not acting on it, is a sort of superpower. Now, with regards to your reaction to other people is all about you, not them. This particular distortion, Ora North, connects directly to narcissism. And I sort of see where she's coming here, and I do quite agree with how she examines this distortion. While we may see parts of ourselves in others, which is a wonderful part of empathy, because that is the whole point of that empathy, is we can empathize with someone. We can feel what they're feeling, see what they're seeing, see ourselves in them. To a point, we must not take on their rudeness, their arrogance, or their malice onto ourselves as our sins, not theirs. You can be kind and respectful to someone, and they will still treat you poorly in many cases. And I rather enjoy how Ora North addresses this here on page 33. Sometimes someone being a jerk to you is really just because they're a jerk. And now for this next section here, I do sort of disagree a little bit with how Ora North discusses this distortion, and I'll explain. So with regards to creating your own reality, she states that she agrees with this to a certain point. This next bit, I guess you could say, is my own personal belief on the topic of you create your own reality. Personally, I firmly believe that the world or culture around you, at its core, with regards to you creating your own reality, doesn't matter, inasmuch as how much you allow it to matter to you. Truly, you have the willpower to stand firm in what you want to manifest. You can want something and you can work towards it, and you can have things that will work against you. Obstacles, mountains to climb, struggles to overcome. You may struggle more than others at times, and may have to fight harder for what you want versus others. But that has been true for all time. Again, as part of the individual experience, unfortunately, no one is truly equal in the sense of the struggles that they are facing. There are caveats and nuances, and throwing out the cry of privilege to everything that someone gains removes the very struggle and pain that they went through to achieve their goal. But note here, what I'm really saying is that I'm not saying that the concept of privilege or bias isn't real. Everyone at some point can experience bits of privilege and bias, either to their benefit or to their detriment. I'm simply cautioning here that throwing out such words does not become the go-to reason as to why someone else is succeeding and you are not. I think it is very easily a method of being able to immerse yourself in the victim mentality. I think there's a bit more healing in acknowledging that, sometimes, depending on where you're at this point in time, you might be at a disadvantage, and that, even a perceived disadvantage, really, and that's okay. It just may mean, in some cases, that you will have to fight harder. You might have to struggle harder for things that you want. And that is okay. That is part of life. And in the end, it is your life, your one life. And you can either roll over and choose to say that the world is against you, or you can stand up and stand firm in yourself and be empowered to go out and seek what you want and learn along the way. And personally, I think you can find in history that history is full of examples of people putting in the work when every single odds seemed to be against them and still rising to great achievement. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is sort of in my own terms for this distortion: control your thoughts, seek counsel, stand firm in your dreams, but also understand what disadvantages you have, all of this have them. Knowing what obstacles and pain are in your path, you know what you must overcome, and you can learn how to conquer them. And let's see now for the good vibes only. Now that is a statement that I have seen and heard more times than I can count. A nice sentiment, but it can really fall flat when someone is trying to speak with you from a point of pain. I agree with Ora North's take on this distortion, that flashing a peace sign and saying good vibes only is really in many ways a convenient way to ignore reality and enable oppression, to directly quote her there from page 34. And I think it's even better on the same page when she says, tell me, what exactly did you accomplish with those positive words and lack of action? Again, words have power, but they can become powerless when they are not backed up by some sort of action. And in this case, with good vibes only, that action being self-work. And so, coming to the end here, why even discuss these distortions? What does this even mean for the empath, really? Well, looking at it, I think the discussion of such distortions is really about providing hope. It means that there is hope. I think looking at them and examining them, we can see that, okay, well, there are solutions for people who acknowledge that glitter and rainbows aren't really doing it. That glitter and rainbows and good vibes only won't help you reach your goals or give you what you truly need. Being that it means that you can acknowledge that you aren't perfect, that you can't just bury that pain deep down inside of you. And as Ora North, discusses at some point in the book, when she was conducting her healing, and she kept wondering, what is wrong with me? Everyone else seems to be so perfect, they seem to be so put together, and yet I am suffering. The healer can't just shove everything aside themselves and be who everyone else needs them to be all the time. The healer also needs healing. The healer also needs rest. The helper needs rest. Again, we are all human, and we all just can't wish away our pain. It is very difficult sometimes to just ignore the hurt that is deep inside of us. But discussing these distortions and sort of peeling back the layers there, I think it means that we can finally acknowledge what we need to work on, and that there are real steps that we can take to work towards real solutions. Instead of just hiding from the pain and being lost in it and covering it up with glitter and light and love, we can actually step up and transform that pain, and as Ora North says, transform sorrow into treasure. And so we covered what I believe is the heart of this book. That as an empath, there will be difficulties in our life. There's difficulty for everyone, really. But knowing you are an empath can grant you some insight into your own struggle. Ora North knows this, and she provides some interesting ways to work through this difficulty at the end of each chapter, in sections that she titles Do the Work. When I first picked up this book, I had no idea that I would be faced with a realistic viewpoint on empaths and their struggles, as well as interesting and unique ways of working through one's trauma or emotional turmoil. Some techniques that Ora North described are things that I've done before, especially back in my art school days. Personifying emotions, or really diving down into what a victim or villain looks like. It was rather quite startling, really, to me to read this book and see that someone else not only had done the same thing, but was actually highly suggesting it as a healing tool. Very interesting. And on top of that, Ora North, besides the personification of emotion and, naming and really sort of giving identity to these emotions as easier ways to come to terms with them. And same thing for our sort of victim mentality and our villain mentality. She also dives a bit further than that. Instead of just validating the existence of the empath, She also points out potential friction points in the empath's relationships, either platonic or romantic, and she also has many warnings against, or I shouldn't say against, but many warnings for the empath about the narcissist. And what's interesting too is how she describes the narcissist sometimes as this sort of empath who's lost their way, or a dark empath, really, which is a term that I had heard used before. And in fact, her entire discussion about the empath and the narcissist has inspired me to create an entire video on the subject, which will come out at some point. Let's see. And really, what I find interesting, and I tend to agree with her here, is that empaths tend to be creative. And I believe Ora North's exercises and descriptions work marvelously with the creative mind. The power of being human, in fact, is our creativity. And through creativity, as we have seen in many examples, there is healing. And I think part of doing the work, really, as Ora North describes it, is moving past the empath's trend towards sacrificing everything for others, including their own boundaries. And it is a concept that I think many struggle with still. And we mentioned this quote earlier, but I want to reiterate it. From page 94, "It's not your job to build your boundaries. It's your job to be aware of what they already are." And I will say, I'd only ever heard before this that one should reinforce one's boundaries. But then I realized that I'd never actually seen any discussion, or had any discussion myself, about where those boundaries actually come from. And I like what Ora North says here. She proposes that those boundaries already exist inside of you, and that working with boundaries really comes down to understanding what they are, what intrinsically, internally to you is a boundary, identifying that wall, if you will, and then figuring out how to work healthily with it and stand by it. It was a unique quote and a unique take on a subject that I've struggled with myself, and just the way she described it, I think, actually helped me personally understand my own boundaries and healthier ways of exploring them and reinforcing them. Ora North covers much in her book, so much so that her words have inspired me to dive more deeply into these themes and topics and make entirely separate videos. I wish I could spend hours really in-depth discussing the entire book and her work, but at some point we must come to a conclusion. And now to sort of wrap this up, with my own personal recommendation, I do actually highly recommend this book for those who identify as empaths. Reading this book with an open mind is essential, though, I would say. Personally, I myself identify as an empath, and what I got from this book was a quiet but strong validation, a comfort knowing that I am not crazy in my deep feelings and drive to help others. And with that all, I will say, however, I also felt a conviction, received a stern reminder of reality, and that in the end it is truly up to me to understand that I am not perfect, and that I have behaviors and pain that affect different aspects of my life, and that they need work. I got a good dose of realism, a calling out, if you will, and for me at least, sort of in tune with what Ora North's mission is. It felt more validating than any amount of positive affirmations could ever give me or have given me. I would say that this book is not just for empaths, for anyone who wants a unique way to look at their experiences and emotions and work through them. This book is wonderful for that. The techniques within, especially the do the work sections especially, I think could be extremely helpful in allowing yourself to try to understand where and why your emotions are coming to you. And I think it is also a useful tool, for providing yourself with the verbiage or descriptive language needed to explain your emotions, your thoughts, or these sorts of discussional themes to family, partners, or even mental health counselors. And I think to sort of highlight this, what I mean by that is an example of a mental thought process that could stem from considering Ora North's words. At least for me, this was sort of let's see, a real life scenario, if you will. So to sort of jump into it, I am angry at something my partner said. I acknowledge that I feel angry in this moment. Why am I angry? I don't know. But instead of lashing out at my partner with hurtful words, I'm going to ask if they could give me a moment to process this feeling. Why am I angry? I think I know why. I feel like my partner was mocking my personal interest that I was talking about with him. In the past, with my previous partner, my interests had been treated with boredom, or they made fun of me. And what my current partner said sounded like they were making fun of me again, which made me defensive and angry. I will go back to them and ask them if that was the intent behind their words. And, as it has turned out, after asking them, they had no idea about my past traumas. I had not brought it up yet, and they truly did not intend for their words to sound mocking. Instead of anger and fighting, he apologized and thanked me for letting him know how I felt, and I was able to acknowledge and process my emotion without letting it affect my relationship in an adverse way. A hypothetical yet realistic scenario, but I think it demonstrates the power of some of the points in Ora North's book and how they can be utilized. So to sort of sum it all up again, the book is real, raw, and validating without sugarcoating or making excuses. This is what awaits you if you choose to read Ora North's book, I Don't Want to Be an Empath Anymore. On a scale of 1 to 5, I would give this book a solid 4.5. I enjoyed it immensely, though I did not agree with Ora North on all points, as one would expect. I don't think you will ever agree with a writer 100%, but that does not mean you cannot learn from them and broaden your own worldview. I suggest no matter your background, especially your faith background, or how you sort of look at the world, and even whether or not you believe that empaths are real, essentially, that if you do choose to read this book, read it with an open mind. And if you have read this book or do read it, please do let me know in the comments below what you felt, what you learned. How did you like the book? Did you not like the book? I would be most interested in discussing it with anyone who has read this book before. And to finalize everything, our final conclusion, I'd like to extend a special thanks to Ora North for caring enough about her fellow empaths to write this book. And I would also like to extend a warm regards to all fellow empaths. The world is a beautiful place with you in it, and I pray that you find the strength and peace in your beautiful desire to help others, while also remembering that you are a unique and wonderful individual yourself, worthy of healing and help. Pax vobiscum. Goodbye, one and all, and see you in the next video.